My name is Megan O'Brien Perri. I am an adjunct professor here at Temple, but I'm also a director in the Philadelphia theater community, and I am a co-founder of 11th Hour Theater Company, which we do pretty much all contemporary musicals or new twists on old things. So that's sort of where my background comes from.
Hi Megan, thank you so much for doing this and sitting down with us to talk about Spring Awakening.
Thank you for having me.
So the first question I have is, what drew you to the play?
Well, I've known this show for a while, since it came out. A lot of my background is in contemporary musical theater, so it seemed like a natural thing that I would know about this show. But I've always really enjoyed the music of the show, and I thought the concept of combining this historical story with this contemporary rock music was really an interesting concept, and I wanted to explore that a little more. I also think that there are some themes within the show that are still very prevalent in our society today, and I think there are things that we see very differently now than we did in 2006 when this story was written. So I think that it's really relevant. But one of the things that I'm always asking myself when I start a project is, why should this story be told now? And I feel like it's really so much of the show is about silencing people who need to be heard, and that feels very appropriate for what is going on in our world right now.
Yes, it does. So another major thing about this production is that it's the first live in-person show at Temple since the pandemic began. I was wondering, what has it been like bringing the play to life? Are there any changes or adaptations that you've had to make for the new
Yeah. Well, the biggest change that we had to make for the pandemic was that we have to do the show in masks, which is a really interesting thing, because so much of the show is there are some incredibly intimate moments in the show, and just in general, having to do musical theater with a mask on is really difficult. Anytime anybody sings or holds out a sustained note, their mask is coming off their face a little bit. So we had to build special masks for the show. And so that's been an interesting, it's been an interesting obstacle to overcome. But I think, and we've had to try and social distance a bit in between scenes and things like that. But I think a lot of it's also going from spending a lot of time at home and on your computer to being in a room full of people for many, many hours. There's a different kind of fatigue to that, like a social and mental fatigue that sometimes, like, we hit a certain hour in rehearsal and you can just see everybody's gone a little, like, they're getting a little loopy at the end of the night. So I think we've all been pretty, it's been really fun to be together and exciting to be back in a room and, like, creating all of this stuff. But it's definitely been a challenge in some ways.
So you've already talked a little bit about this and how everyone's adjusting to spending so much time together. But
Yeah.
I was wondering, how have the cast and crew reacted to being back in person? Did they all come together in a room and cheer the first time they saw each other?
It wasn't necessarily a cheer, but I think it was, I mean, at least for me, I felt pretty emotional the first time I heard them all sing together. And that was the first time in a very long time I've been in a room where there's been a group of people singing. And that was something I used to experience all the time. So that was pretty moving. And I think, but I think in general, it was a similar mix of like, what is going on now, and how are we going to do this together? But I think for the most part, it was pretty enthusiastic, and people were just excited to be back and doing the thing that they love to do.
That's great. So, earlier you mentioned that there were some particular themes that you found very interesting in the play. I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about that. What are some of the themes in the play that stood out to you?
Sure. I actually always make a joke that this show is the public service announcement for why parents need to talk to their children about sex, because there are really terrible consequences to these parents in the show keeping secrets and not giving information when their teenagers are very curious about those subjects. I think that there's a big theme of silence within the show, which the masks actually worked in our favor for. But I think being silenced and oppressed has been something that is very prevalent within the story. I think it's also the underestimation of people who are younger and what they can handle and what ideas they have. I think that, one of the reasons I like working at a university is because I find it really exciting that the people this age really know what they want to do and are excited about getting out into the world and moving the world forward in some way. And I think in this show it's very similar with these teenagers who have questions and want answers and are not getting them. And so they try and find them themselves or get into trouble. And it weighs, there are a lot of consequences for that within the show. I think also this show explores the idea of it's really easy for us to look at different characters in the show and say, this person's good, this person's evil, but it's not that simple. And I think there are so many issues today that we're dealing with that need nuanced conversations and need to be explored in a way that is that explores not just the black and white, but the gray area of and the messy things that happen, because it's not like there are themes of consent within the show, and as far as like where does that problem start? Is it in the teaching of it when people are young? Personally, I think that is a big part of it that we don't teach, and I think this show was written 120 years ago. Well, the original, not the musical, but and we're still struggling with a lot of the same issues. But I think the easy thing is to say it's one way or another, but that doesn't really help us solve the problem if we don't know where the problem's coming from, And I think this show leaves us with a lot of questions about that.
I was also wondering, what did you enjoy the most about the production process so far?
Well, I've definitely enjoyed being back in the room with this creative team and the students, and it's just a really wonderful group of artists that I get to work with, and I'm extremely grateful for that. It's really exciting to see them start with a fairly basic idea of the show, and where all of us start with a fairly basic idea of the show and watch it grow into something that's more complex and fully fleshed out. And But really, for me, it always comes back to the people and the collaboration that we get to do. That's the most important part about theater to me. So it's been really exciting to get back in the room with all these artists and work with them.
One last question. What do you hope audiences will take away from the show?
Well, I hope that they will leave asking a lot of questions and starting conversations about some of the themes within the show. I don't think, especially with this show, I don't think it's our job to give the audience the answers. I think it's their job to walk away with questions and talk about it with their families. And I hope that they start having conversations. I hope that there are debates about the themes within the show, because I think our job as the artists is to bring humanity to the story and to the characters, and hopefully get people in the audience to see some things from a different perspective. I think one of the beautiful things about theater is that you're in the same room with the people that are performing for you, and it's a lot harder to ignore the humanity of a person when they're right in front of you. And I think this show has a lot of humanity in it, and a lot of flawed humanity in it, and I just really hope that people walk away having conversations that they may have never had before with their families and friends, and asking a lot of questions about how we can make things better for the future.
That was wonderful. Thank you.